She thought it was just a broken-down generator, a routine call to fix a corroded power unit behind an abandoned Cold War facility. But when Dani cracked open the rusted access panel, she didn't just find wires, she found a tunnel. What waited beneath wasn't scrap metal or history. It was a buried past, locked behind steel, and inside it, a fortune someone never meant to be found. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. And if stories about everyday people uncovering extraordinary secrets speak to you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode will uncover something even wilder. The call came in like any other third-party maintenance contract. Non-critical, vague notes. Backup generator diagnostics. North side of Building B. Former Cold War facility. Access via rear service road. Dani Steele had done hundreds of these over the years. Municipal grid checks, rusted panels, forgotten tech no one else wanted to touch. But she liked it that way. It kept her moving, kept her out of town, out of gossip, out of reach. She drove up, just after 6 a.m., fog still curling around the trees like ghosts. The facility sat alone, half swallowed by vines and weather, the chain-link fence sagging at the corners. According to the city records, it was once a Cold War communications site, but locals just called it the Ghost Block. She parked her truck on gravel, softened by years of neglect, grabbed her tools, and made her way to the back. The generator housing was exactly where the job order said, tucked behind a brick outbuilding with a faded sign that read, "Authorized personnel only." She pried open the access panel and stared. Not at burnt wiring or frayed terminals, but at a steel door. Seamless, circular, and bolted shut beneath a false floor of gravel and rusted sheet metal. "What the hell?" she whispered. The steel wasn't just stuck. It was part of something deeper. Dani cleared more debris, hands scraping through rust and dirt, until she revealed the edge of a thick hatch, painted with numbers and warnings she couldn't quite read. Military grade. Buried intentionally. Her stomach knotted. She knew she should report it. Call it in. Walk away. But something about the way the door was hidden, not just covered, but disguised, pulled at her. She ran her gloved fingers across a faded stencil. Property of Project Ithaca. She had no idea what that meant, but when she leaned down and pressed her ear to the hatch, she heard something. Not voices, not movement, a faint hum, power. Somehow, after all these decades, something down there was still alive. Dani sat back on her heels, staring at the sealed entrance. This wasn't just a broken generator. It was something else entirely. Her job was to fix things. This, whatever this was, didn't need fixing. It needed to be found. And she knew, in her gut, that no one else was going to do it. So she stood up, cracked her knuckles, and whispered to the empty woods, "All right, let's see what you're hiding." The next morning, Dani was back this time with a crowbar, bolt cutters, her heaviest drill, and 3 thermoses of coffee. She told no one where she was going. Just wrote "Field Diagnostics" in her maintenance log and disappeared behind the trees. The hum had stayed in her head all night, that low, steady vibration that didn't make sense. No grid access, no active reports, no satellite pings. Whatever was down there, it wasn't supposed to be. She pried at the hatch's edge, working around layers of welded steel and rust. Each inch she cleared revealed more markings. Serial numbers, stamped warnings, a corroded fingerprint scanner long dead. A relic. She drilled into one of the bolts, watching sparks fly as the bit bit down into time itself. It wasn't fast work. By noon, her arms were jelly and sweat soaked through her shirt. But something shifted. A seam, then a hiss. She leapt back. The hatch creaked slow, reluctant, and then stopped. A 4-inch gap opened, revealing darkness below. Cool air flowed out like breath from a deep lung. She grabbed her flashlight and aimed it down. Stairs. Concrete. And just past the beam's reach, a door. Real. Not rusted. Sealed. The kind they don't make anymore. Dani hesitated. Not because she was afraid, but because something about this felt like crossing a line. This wasn't maintenance. This was history wrapped in secrets. She descended. Each step felt colder. Not from temperature, but from weight, like the silence itself had mass. The bunker's design was clean, stark, still. Dust hung in the air, but there was no rot. No mold, just age, preserved like a forgotten thought. She reached the door, set her hand against it, and pushed. Nothing. Then she noticed it, a small keypad. The lights were faint, but one still blinked. Green. A fingerprint scanner. Dead above. A code pad below. She tried something dumb. 1962. The door beeped. Red. Then green. It opened, and Dani Steele stepped into the Cold War's best-kept secret. Inside was a room that shouldn't exist. A single overhead light flickered on as she crossed the threshold, motion-triggered, revealing brushed metal walls, clean lines, and a floor free of dust. The air didn't smell old, it smelled filtered, maintained. Like the place had been sealed last week, not last century. The first chamber had cabinets lining the walls, each labeled in a clean military font. Medical, electrical, personnel. One was marked simply, redacted. She stared at that one longest but didn't open it. Not yet. In the center was a desk. On it, a terminal powered. No password, just a blinking green prompt. The moment she touched the keyboard, the screen came alive. Welcome to Ithaca Station. Status, standby mode. Last activity, 11-870, 3 days ago. You are authorized as unknown user. She leaned back, adrenaline thudding in her veins. Someone had been here before. Maybe someone still was. She opened one drawer in the desk. Inside were several cassette tapes, labeled, numbered, some marked test logs, others failsafe. There was a player too, battery-powered, but it clicked when she hit play. Dead. Her flashlight flicked across the room again and landed on something odd. Footprints in the dust. Fresh, not hers. Dani spun around, heart slamming into her ribs. The room was empty, but the prints led from the door to the far wall and stopped. She followed them. There was a panel there, subtle, seamless. A push-release button hidden in the frame. She pressed. The wall hissed, split, and revealed a narrow stairwell, descending deeper underground. Dani stepped back. This wasn't just a bunker. It was something buried within something else. She glanced at the open terminal, then back at the new stairs, and took a breath. If I don't come out, she muttered, don't charge me for the damn coffee. Then she stepped through. The stairwell was narrower, made of raw concrete and steel mesh steps that echoed under each footfall. Dani moved carefully, flashlight sweeping in rhythmic arcs. She counted each landing. 1, 2, 3. Then the stairs opened into another chamber, this one taller, domed, with walls ribbed in lead and titanium. At the center stood a massive blast door. Next to it, a biometric scanner, long, dark, but beside it, an old-fashioned turn handle. No digital override, just human muscle. She gripped it, twisted hard. It groaned like something ancient and wounded. Then the door unlatched. The room beyond looked like a movie set. A war room. Desks with rotary phones. A map of the continental U.S. pinned with colored tacks. Shelves of binders and diagrams. A coffee pot that hadn't brewed in decades. But everything was clean, like someone had been preserving it. She stepped in slowly, running her hand along one table, eyes scanning a set of blueprints labeled Operation Emberfall. No dates, no signatures, just markings that suggested preparation for a world that never came. Her flashlight passed over a framed photo. A young man in uniform. Behind him, the same room but filled with life. Dani turned it over. No name, just a date. May 5, 1967, she whispered. Why hasn't anyone found this? And then the lights flicked on. Not all of them, just a few. enough to cast moving shadows across the space, enough to trigger her instincts. Someone was still maintaining this place. Dani backed toward the exit, but a voice stopped her. "You're not supposed to be here." She spun. An old man stood near the doorway, weathered, tall, wearing a military surplus coat. His eyes were sharp despite the years, and his hand rested loosely on a metal cane. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to steady her breath. "I should ask you the same," he replied. "But I already know the answer." She narrowed her eyes. "You're the girl who fixes things." Dani Steele. Her blood ran cold. "How?" He pointed to a grainy black and white monitor in the corner. "I've been watching. You opened the hatch. You stepped inside. You got farther than anyone ever has." Dani glanced at the camera. "Why haven't you shut it down?" she asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because maybe it's time someone else saw what we were hiding." His name was Ellis Braddock, retired systems engineer, son of Colonel Walter Braddock, the man who once commanded the facility in silence and secrecy during the height of the Cold War. Ellis had lived in the town his whole life, just a ghost among forgotten stories. His cane was from a fall in two, his silence, inherited. He brewed instant coffee from a kit sealed in Mylar, sat across from Dani, and laid out the truth like schematics. This wasn't just a military outpost. It was a contingency capsule, designed to preserve intelligence, assets, and plans in case things went south. Nuclear war, government collapse, you name it. Dani listened, skeptical but hooked. "My father oversaw this place from 1960, 1 to 1972. They called it Project Ithaca. Layers of lies buried under layers of steel." She leaned forward. "And what's still down here?" Ellis paused. "Fortune." Dani blinked. "Money?" "No," he said. "Worse. Gold. Unregistered. Moved during the Nixon administration and lost on purpose. My father didn't lose it, though. He stored it. Thought it might buy the world a second chance if things fell apart." Dani laughed once. Sharp. "And you expect me to believe you've just been waiting here for someone to come along?" He nodded. Serious. "I've kept it sealed for decades. Monitored it, maintained it, waiting to see if the world would end. And when it didn't, I waited for someone I could trust. And that's me?" He looked at her. "You're not here for fame. Not here for power. You showed up with tools and grit. That's the kind of person my father hoped would find it." Dani swallowed. "What do you want from me?" He tapped his cane. "To help me open the final vault, and then decide what the hell we do with what's inside." She stared at him, heartbeat loud in her ears. She came here to fix a generator. Now she might be about to break history wide open. They worked in silence at first. Ellis showed her the inner corridor, a sub-basement accessible only through a pressure-locked shaft that hadn't been opened in 50 years. Dani wired in a portable power unit to bypass the fried circuits. Sparks lit up the hall like lightning against stone. It took 3 hours to cut through the final security latch. The vault inside was unlike anything Dani had ever seen. Its door was circular, polished steel, etched with a phrase in Latin, "Fortitudo per silentium," strength through silence. Behind it, chilled air rolled out like time itself exhaling, and then they saw it. Rows upon rows of stacked crates, government sealed, burn-marked, and beside them, 2 military trunks marked WB. Dani opened one. Gold bars. At least a dozen, each the size of a paperback, stamped with serial numbers and government insignia. She stared, speechless. Not just at the wealth, but the reality of it. The density, the history, the sheer danger. "This is real," she whispered. Ellis nodded. "Estimated at over $12 million. And that's just what's visible." The second trunk held documents, handwritten journals, maps, blueprints. One was titled, "Post, Crisis Plan, Phase 2. She flipped through it. Notes about rebuilding infrastructure, establishing safe zones, a detailed plan for a new world. But one line caught her eye. Assets to be used only by those who act not out of greed, but of grounding. She looked at Ellis. "So why haven't you used it?" He sighed. "Because power corrupts, and fear twists even good hearts. I've lived a long life watching people make the wrong choices." He turned to her. "I'm tired. But I need you to decide what happens next." Dani stared down at the gold again. Her father had been a mechanic too, raised her in a garage, taught her how to keep things running when the world broke down. He died before she ever felt like she was doing more than scraping by. Now she was staring at a future she never could have imagined. But the question was simple. Would she take it? Or build something with it? That night, Dani didn't sleep. She sat alone in the upper war room, Ellis's father's journal spread open across the desk. The handwriting was precise, military clean. But the words weren't tactical. They were intimate. He spoke of fear, of the burden of knowing too much, of watching men design extinction like it was a board game. He spoke of Caleb, his son, a boy who used to hide beneath the comm desk, pretending the bunker was a spaceship. The same son, now sitting across from her, older, tired, and still guarding a legacy that had never been meant for one person to carry alone. In the back of the journal, Dani found a letter. "To the one who finds this. If you are reading these words, then the world has not ended, and that means there is still time, still hope, still work to do. My fortune was not meant to buy luxury, but to seed resilience. Use it wisely, or not at all." She closed the journal and looked at the silent terminal in the corner. It still blinked. "Stand by," like it was waiting for a command. Ellis came in near dawn, a thermos in his hand. "Well, I read it all," she said quietly. "And?" She looked up. "We don't sell it. We don't hoard it. We do what your father couldn't." His brow furrowed. "Which is, we share it." The next few days were a blur of planning. Dani and Ellis cataloged the inventory, every crate, every document, every ounce of gold. She didn't take a single bar out of the vault. Instead, she made copies of the journal, scanned every map, and built a secure digital archive on a portable drive. But more importantly, she wrote something new, a plan. They wouldn't alert the government, not yet. Not until they knew who could be trusted. Instead, Dani drafted a blueprint for what Ellis's father had only dreamed of, a local fund. Community-based, anonymous, and targeted. Veterans' medical bills, school scholarships, restoring old tools for trades programs, quiet acts of rebuilding. When she told Ellis, his eyes watered not with sentiment, but relief. "I kept it buried because I thought no one could be trusted," he whispered. "But maybe I was just too scared to try." She nodded. "Well, I'm not." They locked the vault again, sealed the entrance, and reburied the hatch beneath gravel and rusted sheet metal. Dani kept only two things from the bunker, the journal and the drive. Back home, she went back to work at the shop, but something had shifted. Her repairs felt different. Each oil change and fuse replacement was no longer just a job, it was a ritual of purpose. Her hands were stained, her arms sore, but her heart felt clean for the first time in years. Soon, things began to change in town. Mrs. Kaufman's son, a disabled vet, got a brand new wheelchair ramp built overnight. The high school auto shop received tools they hadn't been able to afford in decades. A single mom found her mortgage paid in full, with no return address. And Dani? She stayed quiet. She didn't tell a soul. But every time she walked past the old Cold War facility, she'd tap the hood of her truck, smile, and whisper, "Still running." The bunker stayed hidden, but its purpose didn't. Months passed. Then, a year. The town changed slowly, not with flashy renovations or news crews, but with quiet acts of dignity. Broken things got fixed. Forgotten people got noticed. And Dani's shop became something more than a garage. It became a refuge. She started a program called Fix Forward. Free repairs for those who needed help. Veterans, elders, teens, learning to wrench. She bought a second lift, taught night classes, even hosted a local high school intern named Miguel, who reminded her a little too much of herself at 17, stubborn, shy, and brilliant with his hands. She never spent $1 on herself, not in the way people expected. No flashy trucks, no gold rings, just new jack stands, better lighting, a coffee pot that finally worked. Ellis came by sometimes. They didn't talk about the vault anymore. They didn't need to. He'd stop by with old military radios, or rare parts, or stories that were half truth and half poetry. One day, he handed her something small, a brass plate. She turned it over. Engraved were 4 words: "We fix what matters." She installed it on the front of the shop, right above the bay doors. And one night, long after the shop had closed, Dani sat on the concrete floor with Miguel, watching sparks from the welding bench fade into darkness. He turned to her and asked, "Why do you do all this?" She thought for a moment, then smiled. Because something powerful was buried a long time ago, and someone finally dug it up. The bunker was never found by authorities. The city eventually sold the property to a conservation trust, who left it untouched. Trees swallowed the chain link. The old building collapsed. But the hatch? It stayed buried, right where it needed to be. Dani never wrote a book, never gave an interview. When people asked how her tiny shop became a community pillar, she just shrugged and pointed at the lift. "I just fix things," she'd say. But those who paid attention knew there was more to it, because under her desk, framed behind glass, was an old journal. And in the far corner of the shop, behind a canvas curtain, sat a sealed military trunk, never opened again. The town of Briarfield grew quiet, but strong. And every time someone broke down, they knew where to go. Not because Dani was famous, but because she believed in something deeper than engines. She believed in legacy, in keeping promises that weren't even hers, in rebuilding what the world forgot. One morning, years later, a teenage girl pulled up in a dented Civic with an oil leak and eyes full of questions. Dani handed her gloves, a wrench, and said, "Let's learn," because that was the real fortune. Not gold, not power, but the chance to pass something sacred forward, quietly, humbly, and without expecting anything in return. As the sun rose over the shop that morning, Dani Steele wiped her hands, opened the garage doors, and smiled at the day ahead. Still fixing, still building, still protecting something the world had almost lost. And deep underground, where steel met silence, the legacy waited not for fame, but for the next person who might need it.